What if the purpose of your life is not to build something, achieve something, or even become someone? What if it is to wake up? It's an extraordinary possibility, but it creates an immediate problem. If enlightenment is your life purpose, what happens to your relationships, ambitions, creativity, and responsibilities? Are they meaningful parts of the journey or distractions keeping you from it? And how would you know enlightenment is your purpose in the first place? Perhaps the desire to awaken is a genuine inner calling, but it could also be the mind's most sophisticated escape plan. Welcome to Mystic Reflections. Today, we're examining a question that sits at the heart of spiritual life. Is enlightenment truly the purpose of human existence? Or does enlightenment reveal that life was never required to justify itself with a purpose at all? Why we need a purpose. Human beings are meaning-making creatures. We don't simply experience events. We arrange them into stories. This happened because of that. I endured this so I could become who I am. I am here to accomplish something that only I can accomplish. Psychologists sometimes call this a narrative identity, the evolving story through which we interpret our past and imagine our future. That story can give us resilience and direction, but it can also create enormous pressure. If life has one ultimate purpose, every major decision begins to feel like a test. Choose the wrong career, follow the wrong path, stay in the wrong relationship, and perhaps you have failed the entire assignment. Spirituality can intensify this fear. Instead of worrying that we chose the wrong profession, we begin worrying that we are living at the wrong level of consciousness. Enlightenment then becomes the ultimate destination, the one achievement capable of making everything worthwhile. But now the mind has taken freedom from achievement and turned it into its greatest achievement yet. What is the state of enlightenment? Part of the confusion comes from the word itself. Enlightenment can sound like a permanent supernatural experience, an endless state of bliss in which every question has been answered and nothing difficult is ever felt again. But that is not how the world's great spiritual traditions have understood it. Although their explanations differ, enlightenment generally refers to a fundamental change in how reality and the self are experienced. Ordinarily, life seems to be happening to a separate me, located somewhere behind the eyes, a vulnerable individual who must control events, protect an identity, and constantly secure a better future. In enlightenment, that sense of absolute separation is said to dissolve or lose its authority. The person does not disappear. Memories remain. Preferences remain. Life still requires decisions. Physical pain and difficult emotions may still occur. What changes is the compulsive identification with them. Fear can be present without becoming an identity. Sadness can move through without generating a second layer of resistance. A thought can appear without automatically being treated as a command or an unquestionable truth. This may bring profound clarity, inner freedom, equanimity, and a natural sense of connection with other life. Not because someone has become emotionally untouchable, but because experience is no longer filtered so relentlessly through the question, what does this mean about me? Enlightenment, then, is not necessarily a continuous spiritual high. It is freedom from a deeply rooted misunderstanding about who or what we are. Why would anyone desire it? Once enlightenment is understood this way, the desire for it becomes easier to understand. Most people know what it's like to feel trapped inside their own minds. We replay conversations that ended days ago. We fear events that may never happen. We compare ourselves with people we hardly know. Even during beautiful moments, part of the mind is already trying to preserve them or worrying about their end. Eventually, some people begin to suspect that this cycle is not inevitable. Perhaps they experience a brief moment in meditation when the usual inner struggle becomes quiet. Perhaps grief or wonder interrupts their ordinary sense of identity. or perhaps success fails to provide the lasting fulfillment they expected. For an instant, life feels open, immediate, and strangely complete. The experience may last only seconds, but it leaves behind a powerful question. If that freedom was possible once, could it become the foundation of an entire life? This is why people seek enlightenment, not necessarily because they reject the world, but because they have glimpsed the possibility of living without being dominated by fear, craving, comparison, and the constant defense of a fragile self-image. At its healthiest, the desire for enlightenment is the desire to discover whether unnecessary psychological suffering can end. But even this noble desire has a hidden danger: a calling or an escape. Sometimes the search for enlightenment begins after grief, failure, loneliness, or disappointment. The familiar promises of life stop working, and a person begins searching for something that cannot be lost. That can open the door to genuine insight. It can also produce what psychologists call experiential avoidance, using an idea or practice to escape painful emotions rather than meeting them honestly. The difference is not always obvious. Meditation may help you understand fear, or help you avoid the conversation that frightens you. Detachment may free you from compulsive attachment, or become an excuse for withholding love. Nothing matters may sound like wisdom when it is actually exhaustion. Here is a useful question. Is your spiritual path making you more available to life or more determined to rise above it? A sincere path usually increases honesty, responsibility, compassion, and the capacity to remain engaged during discomfort. Escape tends to make us distant, superior, or impatient with the untidiness of being human. Any enlightenment that requires you to become less human deserves closer inspection. The 3 layers of purpose. It may help to stop treating purpose as one enormous cosmic assignment. Purpose can exist on at least 3 levels. First, there is practical purpose: caring for a family, developing a skill, solving a problem, or contributing to a community. Second, there is personal purpose: the values and commitments that make your particular life meaningful. Then there is ultimate purpose. The question of why existence itself is here. Confusion begins when we expect one level to answer all the others. Enlightenment may transform our understanding of ultimate purpose, but it will not necessarily tell us whether to become a teacher, raise children, write music, or move to another city. Those decisions still require judgment, nor does awakening make practical purposes meaningless. Freedom from using every accomplishment as proof of your worth may allow you to participate in them more fully. You can build without believing your identity depends on what you build. You can love without expecting another person to complete you. You can pursue excellence without making the outcome a verdict on your existence. Enlightenment does not necessarily replace ordinary purpose. It changes the burden we place upon it. The paradox of seeking. So, should enlightenment become the central goal of your life? For a time, perhaps. A goal can focus attention, inspire discipline, and lead someone toward teachings or practices they might never otherwise encounter. But eventually, a more difficult question appears. Is the seeker trying to discover the truth, or trying to secure a future in which it will finally feel complete? You cannot manufacture enlightenment through ambition alone, because ambition is always moving toward an imagined future. Yet you cannot simply repeat, "There is nowhere to go," and assume the work is finished. That too can become an escape. The path asks for wholehearted participation without a guaranteed prize. Meditate, study, question your assumptions. Notice where suffering is being unnecessarily created, but remain suspicious of the fantasy that one realization will exempt you from uncertainty, loss, vulnerability, or change. Perhaps awakening is not life's grand escape from the human condition. Perhaps it is the end of fighting the fact that we are here. What if life is not an assignment? Maybe life has no single purpose that can be stated in a sentence. That idea may initially sound bleak, but consider what it removes. No hidden examination, no cosmic deadline, no fear that someone else has discovered the correct life while you have fallen behind. Meaning would not need to be found like a missing object. It could emerge through the quality of your participation, through what you care for, what you learn, what you offer, and how truthfully you meet the life in front of you. From this perspective, enlightenment is neither the rejection of purpose nor simply another purpose. It is freedom from demanding that life prove its value before you are willing to live it. So, is enlightenment your life purpose? Maybe the desire for it is bringing you toward an essential discovery. But the discovery may not be that you were born to complete a spiritual mission. It may be that existence was never a problem you were sent here to solve. You can still choose a direction. You can still devote yourself to what matters. You can still seek truth with everything you have. But perhaps enlightenment begins when you realize that your life was never waiting for some future discovery to give it meaning. It was sacred simply because it was yours to live. If you enjoyed this exploration, consider subscribing to Mystic Reflections, where we examine enlightenment, consciousness, and the deeper questions that shape the way we live. Until next time, don't merely ask what purpose life has given you. Ask what becomes possible when you stop treating life like an assignment.